Kia ora. Today I've got another quick video for you on how I do my weathered bronze. Stay tuned. So weathering golden bronze is one of my favourite techniques I've ever learned, and I use it in almost everything I do. It always adds a really deep element to any kind of metallic that you're doing. And so this works for true metallics, it works for non-metallics. It's just a process of adding a kind of aqua colour to a gold. And the reason it looks so awesome is because you've got that warm gold or bronze, and then you've got that cool verdigris look. And so it always looks really successful. I've got a Nurgle miniature that I'm going to be using it on because I've been painting a lot of the Death Guard recently. So he's got a cool fly on his chest. It's like the perfect place to have some weathered bronze. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so here I've got this Blight Lord Terminator. Really awesome miniature. He's the easy build one, but he's still so cool. So we're going to be focusing our bronze on this fly that's on his chest here. It's the perfect place to do this. So first thing we're going to do is base coat him, this little fly I mean, in Balthazar gold. So this is a great kind of warm gold, kind of verging on bronze to start this process. So just base coat this area in the bronze. It'll take 2 coats. Alright, so after 2 thin coats, we've got a nice even bronze going over this fly on his chest here. So let's let that dry and come back for the next step. Alright, so that gold is dry now. Next thing we're going to do is give it a wash. So we're going to be using our old faithful Agrax Earthshade. Our favourite. Everybody's favourite. So I'm going to unashamedly just absolutely drown this in Agrax. Really, really heavy. Not too worried here. Just kind of letting it pull. Yeah, you can see how that's going to give us a really cool kind of dull effect in all these recess areas. So I'm just going to let that dry, and we will come back obviously when it's dry. Awesome. Well, that wash has dried exactly how we wanted and left all of this bronze really worn out in these recess areas and kind of given us a nice kind of dull sheen. Maybe that's an oxymoron, I don't know. Next thing we're going to do though is lift it back up in the areas that we want it to. So I'm going to be using a Sycorax bronze for this. So I've got a little bit of Sycorax bronze over here on my palette, and I'm just going to thin it down ever so slightly, the medium, and then a little bit on my brush. I'm just going to start coming in and bringing up these higher points here. And I like to kind of, when I'm highlighting metal like this, kind of keep it in a bit of a stipply kind of action. Wash your brush frequently when doing metallics, otherwise it dries and cracks all your bristles. So that's looking pretty cool. Bit of a worn effect going on there, but now comes the fun part. So I'm going to leave that to dry and come back for the next. Okay, so we're ready for the next part, and that's going to be glazing in our blues and greens for this kind of verdigris look. And what I like to do for this is make a 50-50 mix of Temple Guard blue and Sybarite green. I just mix them 50-50 on my palette, and you want to thin them down quite a lot. So to give you an idea of the consistency on my finger here, you can see it's quite transparent. So we've got that thin 50-50 mix going on here. And what you want to do is just make sure that there's not too much on your brush. And just in these kind of areas here, let it fall into those kind of areas. So towards the base here, you can imagine the moisture would run into these recesses, and you're just kind of letting it pull up. You're just going to drag it bit by bit into those recesses. You can see how that kind of pulls up in there. So do that around all of these kind of darker areas, letting it concentrate in the deepest recesses. And because we thinned it down, that's what's allowing it to kind of pull up and build up. And so the secret with this is, to do it a couple of times and build up the intensity of the color. So at the moment that blue isn't that intense. So come back to the side that's starting to dry now, and we just do it again, kind of concentrating it in those deepest areas and just dragging the paint into those areas that we want it to sit. Painting over using the side of your brush drag it in like so. Imagine it would kind of pull up around the outside as well, not just on the bronze, it would kind of leak out. So put some onto the armor as well. This isn't obviously the color of the armor I'm going to be using, but you get the idea. So up around this head a bit. Alright, so I think that's given us a nice start. You know, you can see how it's kind of pulled up around these areas, still leaving some of the bronze showing. So I'll let that dry and come back for the next step. Alright, so that's now dry. The next thing we're going to do is build up the intensity of that verdigris with a lighter blue. So I'm using this color here, Baccaroth Blue. It's not the consistency I want, being an edge paint, but with a little bit of water we can make anything what we want it, right? So I've thinned it down to the same consistency that we had before. See, it's quite thin. And what we're going to do with this is just take the littlest bit on the tip of our brush, and we're just going to put this down into those deepest areas. Just letting it fall into those deepest recesses. You can get the idea that it's you know, that's like the oldest of the verdigris, built up over many years. Now that's looking great. It's looking very kind of over the top at the moment, which is exactly what we want. You know, you could make it a lot more realistic by not bothering to highlight the bronze in the first place and keeping it very dull, but you know, I like my contrast and I like things to pop out, and so even when I'm weathering things I still like to highlight them and make them look quite bright. So I'm going to let that dry and come back for the last couple of steps, which we should fire through very quickly. Alright, so now that that's dry, all we're going to do is we're going to go back to our Sycorax bronze, thin it down. And what we're going to do is we're just going to touch up some of these edges here, bring them back up a little bit. You know, this guy does go into battle, so there's probably still a little bit of wear and tear, even if it is old and worn. So I'm just bringing up some of these edges. And then to make it look even more worn, maybe like it's some fresh wear and tear, I'm going to take a little bit of Runefang steel here. Runefang steel, a little bit on the edge of my brush. I'm just going to pop out some of these kind of edges that would catch a little bit more. This is just going to help it look a little bit more worn. Again, being irregular, a couple little nicks. We're not trying to concentrate on our edge highlight technique here, but maybe along the front of this bug here where it sticks out, that'd catch a lot more, and these edges. Little nicks on these wings. The reason we do this after the verdigris is it makes it kind of look like it's a bit more fresh. Like it's scratched off even the verdigris. Alright, I'm very happy with that. You can imagine this guy will be covered in a lot of bronze, so it's gonna be a technique that I'm gonna get very good at by the end of it. But you can see there's a lot of life in that weathered bronze. It's very bright. It's gonna pop out of that chest quite a bit, which is exactly what we want on an icon on a chest. But it's still weathered, it's still old, it still shows a little bit of character. So that's the technique. It's not too complicated. The hardest part is just kind of getting that glaze consistency to where it suits you. You know, you want it to kind of fall into the recesses and take a bit of the sheen off the metallic. But that just comes down to a little bit of experimentation. Yeah, I always test things on my thumb to kind of see the consistency and of course take off the excess as well. And so if it looks like it's quite transparent, so you can see that green there was quite transparent, that blue was quite transparent, but these pinks that I did from an earlier test weren't transparent, so you can see how I can gauge the difference on my thumb. But yeah, that's the technique. I hope you like it. Good luck with all of your own weathered bronze. You can use the same kind of blue-green on non-metallic as well. Maybe I'll do a video on that later. But in the meantime, happy painting. Thanks for tuning in. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. Looking forward to seeing you on the next painting video. Bye.